Imagine you are eating a sandwich. It's a nice ham and provolone, but halfway through the sandwich, the taste seems odd. You keep chewing until you finally look down and see that delectable combination of ham and provolone has been replaced with a dog turd. And that is what it was like watching Risen. One movie that comes highly recommended in Christian circles for its quality is Risen. A story about a Roman tribune sent to investigate the empty tomb showed great storytelling and apologetics potential. This was the expectation I had going in, and why I was under the impression it was a good movie. Risen begins with our protagonist Clavius advancing up a hill leading a cohort of Roman infantry units from Legion 10 against Jewish rebels. The Jewish leader in this skirmish is Barabbas, the man set free, as opposed to Jesus. I suppose this should have been a red flag, but I thought this was depicting Barabbas' capture to set up a later storyline of Clavius being disgusted that the insurrectionist was set free. Instead, Barabbas is killed, and when Clavius returns to Jerusalem, we learn that Jesus is still on the cross. Pilate sends Clavius to expedite the executions, and from there we see the final parts of the crucifixion. The first act seems to follow the Gospels rather well. We see the spear driven through Jesus, and Joseph of Arimathea secure the body for the burial. The second act is where Jesus is risen. Clavius is sent with Draco Malfoy to find the body that the soldiers claim was stolen by the disciples, but Clavius quickly discerns that his soldiers are lying about their story. Unable to rely on the testimony of liars, Clavius seeks to find the disciples. He eventually finds Bartholomew, who sounds like he got high on some DMT-laced weed in a hippie commune. The next part is where the movie takes a complete nosedive. Clavius eventually finds the living Jesus and proceeds to desert the Roman legion to follow the disciples on their journey through the remainder of the 40 days before the ascension. So, before I tear this movie apart, I want to talk about the positives. Risen manages to create a compelling character in Clavius. He is competent, ambitious legionary, fighting battles so that one day he may experience peace. In the beginning, we see that he is fervently defiant of God in favor of the Roman gods. We see him open his eyes to the power of the real God and see him pray to God in the most Roman way possible. And when he sees Jesus, we see him go all in. In short, Clavius is a compelling character. Joseph Fiennes gets the MVP here. The movie is also graphic when necessary, especially with dead bodies, which shows the humanity of the Roman soldiers crucifying Jesus. But the rest of the story is not very compelling. I would even call it disrespectful to the Bible, for the story contradicts the Bible. In Risen, we see Clavius develop a deeper relationship with Peter. But Peter would need to be told multiple times in a dream that salvation is for the Gentiles too, so already this story is unrealistic and contrary to the documented life of Peter. Nevertheless, we see Clavius follow the disciples as the 12th wheel as they journey north to Galilee. This third act in the movie drags so slowly and the budget seems to run dry. Clavius becomes a device to depict in film what happened after the resurrection, rather than to tell his story. Instead of original storytelling, we got fan fiction that was only a few rungs more faithful to the source material than HBO's Game of Thrones. Ultimately, Risen flounders into fan fiction by trying to tell the story rather than its story. Straying from the detective in antiquity was a disastrous storytelling decision that Scripture had to be shoehorned to conform to. It undermined a compelling narrative that could conform with Scripture, which was the premise of the movie that gathered the interest of the audience in the first place. The sheer hubris of this movie to depict a fan fiction account of the Gospels makes me recommend it for no audiences.